Welcome to That's Based. I'm your host, as always, Caleb Salvatore, reporting from somewhere underground. We're laughing our way through the end of days, brought to you by Outlaw Streamers, along with our friends over at Blood of Tyrants Wines. Drink bloodoftyrants.com with the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D. Like the title of the show, will save you 10% off your order at the checkout. They got two types of wine, both red and white, along with the Liquid Freedom energy drink. If you use the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show, you're going to save 10% off your order at the checkout. Go do it right now. Right now. Go do it right now, and I promise you won't forget it. All right, well, we have got a condensed show for you today. Mia is not with us. She'll be back Monday. So rather than running the whole show by myself, as we've all learned, I'm not capable of doing. I can't do a full big show by myself. It's too much work for one person. If I want to put out a quality show, it is actually a team effort. It's not just me, believe it or not. But we'll do a condensed show. I got a whole bunch of stuff we're going to talk about. You're going to get all your usual fun here. And then we'll be back to your regularly scheduled programming come Monday. But so I got this text message here. Because it's political text message season, by the way. If you're in Omaha, go write me in for mayor on Tuesday the 13th. This upcoming Tuesday, write me in for mayor. I'm the only one that's not a baby killer. I'm the only one that doesn't want to waste your money. I'm the only one that doesn't want to take your guns away. I'm the only one who doesn't have a chance at winning, but you should still write me in anyway to stick it to those pricks over there at City Hall. But so it's election season. I got a text message, and evidently we're going to start campaigning for 2026 right now. That's right, baby. It's on. So I get a text message from someone named Denise Powell, who is running to unseat Don Bacon. She's a Democrat, and we all know I'm not a big fan of Don Bacon. Now, here's what I will tell you. I have got it on fairly good authority. This is Bacon's last term as congressman. And I've got that on good authority from three different sources, all of whom don't know each other, all of whom have given me different information that leads me to believe Don Bacon is done Bacon in 2026. He's not going to run again. There's several reasons. I can't tell you why, because if I tell you why, I'm going to out all three of these people. But I'm 90% positive that we have seen the last of the old horse. Okay, Don Bacon, he's done. But this Denise Powell, nonetheless, she is running against his ghost. So here's what it says. Let's see what she is. Well, what are her qualifications to be a member of Congress? Says Denise Powell is a mom.
I notice your kids both look retarded.
A small business owner, a public school champion. What the hell does that even mean? A public school champion. Does she go to the public schools and just beat the shit out of the kids? And call herself the champion? Like pulls up with a WWE belt? What is a public school champion? And a healthcare advocate? So she's a mom, small business owner, public school champion, and healthcare advocate, okay? She doesn't, other than mom, all of those are very, very general statements that almost feel intentionally ambiguous. What is your business? I want to know what your business is, because right now, I'm leaning towards you're involved in one of the pyramid schemes. Like you're selling some Nutrilite for Arbani or some crap like that and running around calling yourself an entrepreneur. That's what I think when you tell me you're a small business owner and you don't tell me what you do. Nothing. Public school champion, your guess is as good as mine on that one. And then a healthcare advocate. I mean, I advocate for it too. If you're sick, go to the doctor. What the hell does that even mean? So she knows the good life is getting harder to come by. It's why after Trump's election, she left a successful career in corporate America to run a pyramid scheme. No, to focus on fighting for what makes Nebraska such a special place to live and raise a family. So when she calls, again, this is adding to my theory that she is in a pyramid scheme. You can't just Listen, we're all regular human beings, right? None of us are rich that are listening to this show. We don't just have fuck you money. I don't have fuck you money. How many people can just afford to quit, especially with kids, can just afford to quit an, and I quote, successful career in corporate America? Again, very vague. Was she a bank teller? What was she doing? But how many people can afford to quit a successful career in corporate America to go into political activism, which, mind you, has little to no money, unless they have a spouse who's well-to-do? So my guess is, that I don't know, this is my theory here, husband's got a little bit of cash, she was getting to run around playing boss babe, then decided she was bored making PowerPoints for $50,000 a year, and now she was going to kind of segue into politics, and she's running some type of sex toy or makeup or whatever pyramid scheme, MLM, whatever you want to call it. They're all the same thing on the side so she can campaign around as a business owner while being intentionally vague. Gee, do you think Denise is going to come on the show? It says, over the past decade, she supported hundreds of Nebraskans running for local office, protected our public schools and the families they serve, and helped stop extremists from passing abortion bans in the state. Then she goes on to talk about how bad Don Bacon is. She says, every day we see more of our friends and neighbors struggling to make ends meet, while Donald Trump and MAGA extremists are focused on trade wars that are increasing our cost of living, passing massive tax breaks for billionaires like Elon Musk. There has been no tax cut passed yet, mind you. Strong families, strong businesses, strong communities, they all require work and investment. But everything we fought for here at home is under threat, from dismantling Medicaid and making it harder for seniors to get benefits. So this is the reason I'm bringing this up. Why are you bringing up this woman who is probably not even going to make it out of the primary? If this is their best bet, they're going to lose any two again, no matter who runs. But you're asking, why are you bringing this woman up? Why are you leading off with this? Well, this is going to segue into my lead topic here. But the reason I'm bringing this up is this is becoming a common theme with some of these more far-left progressive candidates and their websites. You know what she didn't talk about there? She didn't talk about issues. Specifically where she stands on them. She used buzzwords like MAGA extremists and Medicaid, healthcare, education. She didn't actually tell you what her plan was, and she didn't actually tell you where she stood on these issues. Do you want to know why? Because this is becoming all too common with Democrats. They intentionally leave the issues off of their website, and they dance around them when they're pressed on them because they don't want to have to actually answer for them. They don't want to tell you how they feel about these issues because they know they're so wildly unpopular. And that's what that brings us into our lead topic here. So Gavin Newsom, remember, I told you guys a month ago with Monty Scott on the air, he asked who I thought the Democrats' nominee was going to be, and I told you it'd either be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Gavin Newsom. Everybody else is really competing for that vice presidential ticket there. But Gavin Newsom had this press conference, and this is what he said. Oh, sorry, wrong one.
We lost the popular vote, and we lost the electoral vote. We got crushed, and we need to be humble about that, and we need to have some grace, and we need to understand why. Was it because of the incumbency penalty? Was it because of inflation? Was it because of interest rates? Was it because of immigration? Was it because we were too, quote unquote, woke? Was it because of issues with Israel? Was it all of the above? I think we are going through that forensic. We need to understand at the same time, we also have to push back against the whitewaters and headwinds of the Trump administration.
But, I mean, you're leaving something very important?
So that's a guy who's dangerous because I think politically, between him and AOC, their beliefs are not actually that far apart. He's probably a little bit more moderate than her when you look at the way he's governed and how he would be as a president, but they're not that far off. The difference between the two of them and why I think Newsom is actually a better player in the general is because Newsom at least kind of gets how the game is played. He understands it. AOC seems to have no problem tripling down on the river to the sea crap, on the transgender garbage, on the post-birth abortion, whereas Newsom has not only moved to the center on some of those issues and, tried to whitewash a lot of history and things he said. Newsom has done something that's very interesting, which is he's found issues that really aren't political, but the average voter that's not tuned into politics, unless it's a presidential election year, will see those issues that he's taken and go, oh, I like that. It's a very, very intelligent campaign tactic. I'll give you an example. He has inserted himself and passed a law recently, last year in California. He inserted himself into the debate on cell phones in schools, ban cell phones in public school classrooms. Now, that seems like a non-issue, but it's an important one to the guy that's working a 9 to 5 and his wife that's working a 9 to 5 that don't have the time to homeschool their kids and double check what they're into, but they're worried about, are my kids actually getting a good education? And they see the stuff on the 6 o'clock news about all the cell phone addiction and how it's ruining kids and their study habits. And then they see this guy named Gavin Newsom come along, inserting himself into the issue that's not a culture war. Like, let's be honest, these culture war issues that we even talk about on this show really don't affect all of the general public all that much, not as much as these issues do. So he's intelligently positioned himself into the middle of issues that the average everyday American swing voter cares about. Now, is he actually going to take care of these people when he takes office? Of course not. And I also have my hesitations on how easy it would be for them to sell him to the general public. I don't see a blue-collar worker in Michigan being able to relate to Gavin Newsom, but I also don't see him voting for AOC. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't there. However, with that said, Gavin Newsom, the difference between the two of them, like I was saying, Gavin Newsom actually understands the way the game is played. Newsom kind of gets it. He doesn't get it all the way because he's still kind of a West Coast smug elitist prick, but he kind of gets how to play the game. He knows why they lost. He's not batting 1,000 in terms of making adjustments, but he knows why they lost. That press conference, he ran down everything. He's not Tim Walz going frolicking around, doubling down on the bullshit. He gets it. He says we went way too far to the left on issues that people weren't comfortable with. We have to stop. That's the big difference between Gavin Newsom and a lot of the Democrat Party. And the scary part is Gavin Newsom is further to the left than a lot of folks in the Democrat Party. He's just not showing it right now. He's a slick politician. I mean, this guy could very well be Bill Clinton 2.0, and that's scary. Now, I've been listening to his podcast because I think it's important to listen to people so that we disagree with, number one, so you don't just get into an echo chamber, but number two, so we know how to counter what they're saying, and we know what their game plan is. I mean, if the enemy's going to go out and broadcast a game plan, we would be stupid to not go, maybe pull a little Bill Belichick and grab our 23-year-old girlfriends and our hoodie and our camera and sit up there and record their practices, right? We'd be kind of dumb not to do that. So I've been listening to his podcast, and he had a show, an episode where he interviewed these two reporters that wrote a book about why the Democrats lost and where Harris went wrong in her campaign and how she was stupid to, shun the podcast and think she was bigger than Rogan and all this stuff. And he gets it. He's surrounding himself with people who get it. That's the other part there. So he actually understands what adjustments need to be made. Now, is he going to make those adjustments and is it going to be believable? That's another conversation. The other thing I'll say about him, the guy is a damn good talker. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. I could see him, despite all of his baggage and how horrible he's done with California, once again, to the average, I hate to call them low information voters because I'm not insulting their intelligence. They just don't follow politics like the rest of us do. But I could very easily see him getting in front of the average low information voter and swaying them because he is a good talker and he has an uncanny ability to manipulate data that maybe doesn't favor him into an attack on his opponent. The guy is an operator in the political sphere, and we would be stupid to ignore him. So if you haven't listened to This Is Gavin Newsom, He has an episode with Amy Parnes and Jonathan Allen that aired on April 30th. Once you're done listening to this show, you should go listen to it. Because it's interesting to see how the Democrats that aren't totally blinded by the wokeness that want to keep doubling and tripling down, that's completely they can't do that. If they do that again, they're going to get dog walked in 2028. But it's interesting to see how the Democrats who understand they fucked up think. People like him, people like James Carville, people like Stephen A. Smith, people like Cenk Uygur. Those are people we should be paying attention to. Because those are the only people that the Democrat Party has, or excuse me, if they want any hope at winning in 2028, those are the only people they can listen to right now. It's a very odd group of people, but that seems to be their best angle. Now, he also interviewed, he had a great, I shouldn't say great because I don't like him. I'm not a Newsom fan. I want to make that clear. I find it interesting to see what the other side's saying, and more importantly, I find it valuable to see what the other side is saying. But because he doesn't go on there. There's a couple episodes where they do, but he doesn't go on there and push his views, right? He's more talking the ins and outs of politics on this show, and that's what's interesting. So he did an interview recently with Jackson Katz. Katz came on Newsom's podcast. I guess you'd say it's more of a conversation. And it also showed that while, yes, he does understand how the game is played, he's got a little bit of a ways to go. And the Democrat Party as a whole has a little bit of a ways to go. Let me read the Wikipedia, the bastion of infinite knowledge, what it has to say about this Jackson Katz guy. Here, I'll pull it up real quick. Jackson Katz, K-A-T-Z, is an American educator, filmmaker, and author. He has created a gender violence prevention education program entitled Mentors in Violence Prevention, which is used by the U.S. military and various sporting organizations. He's a former high school football player from Massachusetts, the first man to minor in women's studies at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. He holds a master's degree from Harvard and a Ph.D. in cultural studies from UCLA. Tommy! But this guy went on Newsom's podcast, and I'll play you a clip of it, and let me know if you know what's wrong in the comments. Drop one on YouTube and Rumble for me. And share the show around if you're having a good time with us.
Men's rights movement, which was organizing itself, and then when the internet came into the picture, they were organizing through connecting with each other through the digital universe, and it was called the Manosphere, and it was, again, a small sort of corner of the internet. It's become completely mainstream now.
Right.
So Donald Trump's election in 2016 was a big accelerant to the mainstreaming of the manosphere. And now a lot of young people, young boys in particular, but not exclusively, but certainly young boys and young men, get drawn into the manosphere. And by the way, not necessarily because they're, ideological. It's not because they have like a critique of feminism or something or anything or masculinity. It's more like the algorithms draw them in.
Yeah, they may be learning about a YouTube version of a video game they like, and all of a sudden there's an ad
That's right.
That's, with a Bugatti or something, and they click onto that, and all of a sudden they're part of some university.
That's right.
And then all of a sudden, 2 months later, they're in a conspiracy theory.
That's right. That's right. And part exactly. And part of the conspiracy is that men are being taken advantage of, and that men are being disadvantaged, and that feminists are anti-male, and that you as a man need to stand up and speak up and fight back, because that's the whole red pill idea. Like somehow you're now consciously seeing that the world is lined up for women, and which is, by the way, again, talk about a topsy-turvy understanding of the way the world works, right? And by the way, a lot of these men, as you know, have never taken a course on, gender. They've never read a book about it. They've never attended seminars. They haven't watched, long YouTube videos, or even TED Talks, like my TED Talk or other people's TED Talks. They haven't had much exposure, but they have heard that, feminists hate men, and especially white men. Let me just say, this is one of the things that I think is really great about you doing this.
Oh boy. Whole lot to unpack there with that retard.
Your kids look like retards.
Oh my goodness, Jackson Katz. So just when we think Newsom's got it all figured out, he brings that asshole on. Now, that whole conversation was how to, again, I found it to be an interesting episode because they were trying to figure out, it was fun. They were having like a struggle session, the two of them, trying to work through live on air. How do we relate to young men more? Why have we lost young men in such violent waves to the Republican Party? And that interview made it clear, if Katz is really the expert, that they just don't get it. You got me red-handed, buddy. I've never attended a seminar on gender. You figured it out. And you know what? I'll tell you what right now, if the future of the Democrat Party is dependent on young men under the age of 30 attending seminars on gender, they will never win another election in this country again. It's over. You might as well pack it up and go home, because ain't nobody wants to do that. Now, here's my thing. The problem is, I don't have an issue with the concept of combating toxic masculinity. The problem is what qualifies as toxic masculinity and what qualifies as just a man being a man has become far too gray. The line has become way too blurred for my liking, right? So a guy wanting to go out and, lift weights or do whatever, learn how to fight, that's all of a sudden become toxic masculinity. Those are just traditional male activities. We have higher testosterone rates. That's why we want to go out and do those things. But that's been labeled toxic. Now, I'll completely agree. Frat boys hooking up with girls that can barely, that are barely conscious at parties. Yeah, that's a problem. That's toxic. I wouldn't even consider that to be masculinity, though. That's the issue here. Some of the locker room cultures, I get it. But the problem is people like that asshole blur the lines far too much. They think you want to be they want you to become this sensitive, feminine pussy and abandon everything that makes you a man. They don't allow any type of middle ground between the two. You're either Andrew Tate or Dylan Mulvaney. That's the line, or Tim Walz. That's the line they want you to draw. Now, if you see what Newsom said there toward the end of that video, he mentions that, young men are watching a video, a how-to on a video game they want to play, and then they get an ad for a Bugatti, and he's talking about Andrew Tate. And they go to some online university, his Hustlers University, and now they're involved in some conspiracy theory. Again, they show how out of touch they still are with young men and how much further they still have to come. I mean, that's what you're reducing men to. Look, there is something to be said about why young men are gravitating towards someone who I'm not a fan of, by the way, like Andrew Tate. But to reduce them and demean them by just saying, they basically go, "That's shiny thing, da, da," and all of a sudden they're involved in this nonsense. You're diminishing the issue. It comes off as very smug and condescending, and he doesn't even realize that. Never taken a course on gender. How many genders are there, Jackson? Do they teach that on the first day in the course on gender? I would certainly hope so. Joe Rogan was, of course, an issue in this interview. They made this bogus claim in this interview, by the way, that Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson mock women who speak out about rape. Listen, I don't listen to all of Rogan's content, and I'm not a big Jordan Peterson fan either. But I feel like if either of those guys mocked women who were raped, that would be front page fucking news on CNN. I've never seen anything even remotely close to mocking women who got raped from either of those two. And this guy's their masculinity expert. Hey, man, why don't you ask yourself why I just heard of you today? And Joe Rogan has hundreds of millions of listens to his show every month. Ask yourself why young men gravitate to somebody like Joe Rogan rather than you. It's because they see Joe's not toxic. That's the problem. Is guys like that label guys like Joe Rogan as toxic. I get when you want to label somebody like an Andrew Tate with that. That makes sense. What does Joe Rogan do that's toxic? He's in a monogamous relationship. He takes care of his kids. He's very inquisitive, has conversations with some of the greatest minds on earth. He's not afraid to be exposed to new ideas. What about Joe Rogan is toxic? It's that he lifts weights and shoots guns and says no words. That's it. That's it. So if you're asking men to compromise on the very things that make them men, the very activities and hobbies and natural tendencies that make them men, to come over to your side, the answer is going to be no every time. So you got this guy like Rogan who appeals to men because he is a man's man. He used to be a liberal. You guys drove him away. Your own toxicity in the Democrat Party on the left drove Rogan away from you. And with him went all of his listeners. Millions and millions of young men between the age of 18 and 40 went away with him because you guys drove him off. You guys are the toxic ones, not him. It's toxic bitch-madeness. That's what it is. That's the thing. He's their masculinity expert. If you watch that interview, you really should. You really should, because it'll put into perspective how out of touch the left is on the male issue. Like I said, Newsom's starting to figure out why they lost. The entire Democrat Party still cannot figure out the young male issue and why they struggle with them so much. That entire podcast, that guy does nothing but attack and blame men. It was like watching an hour and a half of that Gillette ad from a couple of years ago that lost them all that business. It's the reason I still won't buy a Gillette razor. They still don't get it. They're still disconnected. Tim Walz went on, I don't remember what show it was. Tim Walz went on and said that he was chosen because he spoke the guy code and they needed him to relate to him. If Tim Walz is the closest thing to a man's man you guys have, you're done. You're out. The guy gets up and frolics around like a fairy on stage. You're telling me if my choice is that guy or Joe Rogan, that's any choice whatsoever? Of course not. And that's what that showed. That they can sit here and they can hash out what's wrong. And it really was. It's an important video to watch because it showed that a lot of the left that's like this Jackson Katz guy has absolutely no absolutely no desire to address their problem with young men. They would rather just keep blaming them. And what's going to happen is they're going to blame them until they blame themselves into obscurity. I mean, as long as Tim Walz is still the Democrat Party's idea of what a man's man looks like, they're cooked. The worst part was, I genuinely believe 60% of the Democrat Party, Tim Walz is actually what they see as a man's man. That's their masculine, that's their divine masculine, Tim Walz. It wasn't just a pathetic attempt at pandering for about 2/3 of them. They genuinely believe that that's what the average Midwestern blue-collar working male is like, is Tim Walz, who was a DEI hire, by the way. People hear DEI, they think it's black people and women. Tim Walz was picked because he was a quote-unquote straight white guy. People forget that. So as long as Tim Walz is the Democrat Party's idea of what a man's man looks like, they will never win another presidential election in this country until they address that. Now, had they picked Tim Walz and just said, hey, we like him because he's governor, he did a good job as governor of Minnesota, this, and that, I don't think he would have had quite the negative effect. But the fact that, with the camo hats and all that stuff, the fact that they tried to play this guy off as this hyper masculine, blue collar, gun toting football coach from the small town in Nebraska. People saw right through it. They're like, yeah, no, I don't know what that guy is, but he's definitely not that. If they just would have said, this is our governor of Minnesota, he's a flag bearer, he's a yes man, whatever, people would have went, yeah, he's kind of weird, and left it. But the fact that they tried to shove him down our throat as the definition of masculinity, it was offensive to a lot of guys. And they said, no, thank you. We're good on that one. We appreciate it. But no, thank you. And now he thinks he's going to be president. What a fucking joke. What a fucking joke Tim Walz is. Dude, just fade away into obscurity, okay? Just go away. We don't want you. No one wants you. Your own party is going to guarantee with the superdelegates that you have no chance in hell at being the nominee in 2028. Why are you going to go waste a bunch of people's time and money and resources? Go do something productive with your time. Tim Walz. I mean, he is. The tampon Tim thing stuck because he's a pussy. Do you think if they would have called Donald Trump tampon Trump, that would have stuck? No, it wouldn't have made any sense. Or vagina Vance. People would have been like, what are you talking about? But because Tim Walz comes off as such a pussy bleeding little bitch, everyone just kept calling him tampon Tim, and the nickname stuck. You never had a chance in hell at relating to young men. And it's like I said, that's the worst part, is 2/3 of the people in the Democrat Party. They're so disconnected. And maybe this says a lot about it, they have no real male role models or male figures in their lives, no strong male figures. Maybe this speaks to volumes to the mental illness and the retarded political beliefs, that they took a look at Tim Walz and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. And they just cannot process why people can't relate to Tim Walz. This chubby serial liar that goes up and frolics on the stage like a little fairy. What do you mean you like Joe Rogan with his weightlifting and hunting and tattoos more than Tim Walz? What are you talking about? It's a joke. It's a joke. They even brought up in this Jackson Katz brought up about how toxic porn is, which I agree with. He brought up how toxic porn is to young men. Porn is not making young men vote Republican, though. It's not. You guys are the ones that campaigned on it. Remember those creepy ads we played with sex noises going on in the background that you guys funded? You don't get it. Porn has nothing to do with why young men are voting Republican. I guarantee it. That's a scourge regardless of who you vote for or if you vote. That's a cross people have to bear no matter what. And I agree, it's degrading people's views on sex. It's hurting relationships. I understand that. You're not going to find any argument on that from me. However, the idea that somehow if a young man watches porn, that's going to make him more susceptible to right-wing content is laughable. Laughable. I'm talking 100% of these anti-porn content creators that go out and they speak against pornography abuse on the internet. 100% of them swing to the right. 100% of the politicians that campaigned thinking this would somehow relate to young men and make them more appealing to young men, 100% of the politicians that campaigned on protecting your right to goon were Democrats in this last election cycle. 100% of them. Which is insane because it's an addiction that destroys families the same way drugs do. I couldn't imagine, showing some guy shooting up heroin and being like, the Republicans want to take away your right to do this. Fucking retarded. But they'll blame anything and everything. And it really is. I don't even know if this is like a blame game that this Jackson Katz and the Dems are doing here, or if they truly just cannot. It's not computing because they're coastal elitists that just cannot put two and two together. They just keep missing the mark. They cannot figure it out. You can't understand something you've never truly experienced. You can't. I can study the history of basketball and look up all of the plays and whatnot all I want. I can go, I can watch seminars from all these brilliant coaches. All of it. But if I've never picked up a basketball and dribbled it before, I'm not going to be able to coach a game. I'm certainly not going to be able to play in a game. Until you've experienced the thing firsthand, you're never going to be able to truly understand it. That goes for anything in life. How do you teach a kid to drive? If your son turns 15, do you make him watch a bunch of YouTube videos about the history of, the automobile and the engine? Read a bunch of, you read your car's manual on how to take care on maintenance and repairs and whatnot and parts? You send him out to the O'Reilly Auto Parts and make him take notes on the different types of parts there? No. You put him behind the fucking wheel and you let him figure it out. They got to experience the car firsthand if they want to learn how to drive it. These people have never experienced what a genuine man's man from the Midwest is like, and they'll never be able to understand it. They surround themselves with champagne-sipping fellow coastal elitists, and they will never be able to comprehend what a blue-collar dude from the Midwest is like. Not someone who looks like he plays one on TV, like Tim Walz, the CW, not even ABC, but a real human. And when they continue to pander in such pathetic ways like that, they'll continue to lose. Now, here's a video from Harry Sisson, the twink in chief for the Democrat Party, on the Piers Morgan show. This is interesting. Kind of plays into this. Check what he had to say here.
Democratic Party are right. We lost badly. The people have made their voices clear that they don't like the wokeism, they don't like the cancel culture. And if we, the Democratic Party, continue to say, actually, we're going to force it down your throats, you're going to like them no matter what, we will continue to lose, and Donald Trump will continue to thrive.
I'll play that for you one more time. Oops, shit.
Democratic Party are right. We lost badly. The people have made their voices clear that they don't like the wokeism, they don't like the cancel culture. And if we, the Democratic Party, continue to say, actually, we're going to force it down your throats, you're going to like them no matter what, we will continue to lose, and Donald Trump will continue to thrive.
So Harry Sisson has done a total 180 from his rhetoric over the campaign, where he was shamelessly cheerleading for both Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris. I'm a firm believer that with people like this, words matter. Notice what he said at the end there? The Democrats cannot continue to say all of this woke nonsense. He didn't say do. He said say. And the same goes for Newsom, who's backpedaled on a lot of the woke insanity. The cancel culture, the trans kids, the men and women's sports, the late-term abortions. Sending kids out to, pride and drag shows, letting them look at naked men. They've backpedaled on those issues because they're not politically convenient. They tried to gaslight people and shove them down their throats. It turned out it was very unpopular. It didn't work. People got sick of the cancel culture. But make no mistake, they're not saying that they were wrong on the issue. They're saying it was a bad campaign strategy. So when they say it was a bad campaign, so when they say we lost because of the wokeism, they're not saying we were wrong about the wokeism. There's a big difference between those two. To admit you got an issue wrong versus just admitting that that issue was part of why you lost because it was an unpopular one. You didn't say the people spoke, and, I went back and reevaluated my stance on that, and you know what? You got it right. So what that means is that when these people, if these people, pray to God not again in my lifetime, if these people reclaim any type of serious power, both politically and culturally, they're going to bring this stuff right back. They won't campaign on it. They won't talk about it. They'll dance around it when they're asked in press conferences and debates. But they will bring this stuff back because they don't have a problem with the actual principle. They just have a problem with the fact that it's detrimental to their campaign and them getting elected. So when people like this say these things, words are they're very calculated with their words. Pay attention to them. The cancel culture will come back if these folks win. The trans kids, the men and women sports, the mass migration across the southern border, just open borders, letting everybody in. They've never admitted that they were wrong about those. They just said, yeah, I guess the American people didn't quite like it. They'll find other hot button issues, make them their own, even if it's issues the Republicans are winning with, make them their own, and then they'll backdoor in all the woke crap and all the open borders and all the insanity that we dealt with over the last 4 years in the Biden administration. That stuff's not going away. They still believe in it, or they claim to at least. And they have no problem ramming it down your throat. So notice he said, we're not going to say we're going to ram it down your throat. They're going to ram it down your throat just after they get elected. They don't want to talk about those. They're going to pivot to things they can win on. It's like a boxer who knows he can't win in a brawl, like Floyd Mayweather. Guy knew toward the end of his career he wasn't going to go into the ring and win a punching match with Manny Pacquiao. So he switched to a defensive standpoint. And he won. He dominated him. There was no doubt about it. That's how he spent the end of his career, was fighting defensively. Because he knew he couldn't win a brawl. The Democrats know they can't win with the woke stuff. They're just going to ignore it. Now, Floyd Mayweather, he could get into a brawl if he had to. He never lost the ability to brawl. It just wasn't an effective strategy to win. They're not dropping these ideas. They're just not effective to winning. They can still do it. They're still going to do it. It's just not how they plan to win. They'll do it afterwards, right? Okay. That's enough of that. Let's talk about Mark Carney. Mark Carney went to the White House this week. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, the recently elected Prime Minister of Canada. By the way, the Canadians were big mad at me as I dared to criticize their precious Pierre, the conservative leader, because he campaigned like a little bitch with his tail between his legs. Shut up. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. Okay, keep losing. I don't give a fuck. Would I like to see conservatism spread, across the world? Yeah, absolutely. It really doesn't affect me at the end of the day all that much if you guys keep losing, though. And honestly, your little pussy-whipped liberals are probably easier for us to bully around and get what we want with them anyway. So go right ahead. Pierre campaigned like it was 2004. I correctly called that out, and you guys got upset about it. Fuck off. I'll call you know what? I'm going to call Pierre out once every episode on this show for the rest of the year now. I'm just going to randomly, in the middle of an episode, remind you that Pierre Poilievre is a little bitch who campaigned like a coward. I'm going to take us. It'll be random. It might be in the middle of a rant. I'm just going to drop everything I'm talking about and remind the Canadian listeners that got so upset with me last week for correctly calling a spade, and remind them that Pierre Poilievre, I don't even know how to pronounce the guy's name correctly. That's how little respect I have for him. That he campaigned like a bitch, like a pussy, afraid to hurt anybody's feelings, didn't want to step on anybody's toes, got his ass beat in his own election because of it. Somebody else, this is how embarrassing this is. I don't even know they could do this. He lost his own parliament seat because he campaigned so lazily. Absolute loser. Lost his own parliament seat. Somebody else who actually bothered to campaign and won their seat said, hey, I'll bow out. I'll step down. How pathetic do you feel? You got handed your seat as a charity case, Pierre. You little pussy bitch. You're a pathetic fraud. I would never show my face in public again. That's like when the mom and dad are broke and they're trying to buy groceries at the grocery store, and every card's getting declined because they're either empty or maxed out. And the little kid's there, and he sees his mom struggling to pay for the groceries, and he pulls $3 that he got for his birthday out of his wallet, and he's like, here, mommy, I'll help you. That's how Pierre Poilievre should feel. He should feel like the broke mom holding up the line at the supermarket right now, because he's a bitch. Campaigned like a coward. Anyways, Mark Carney, who I don't like, after handing Pierre Pussyvery an ass beating in the election in Canada last week, headed down to the White House to meet with Donald Trump. And if you remember, Mark Carney was the one with all the tough talk, you know, uniting Canada against Trump, and he had all the slogans and whatnot. And we're going to play 2 clips for you. Watch how quickly his rhetoric changed before the election and while he was meeting with Donald Trump. The first one's prior to the election. The second one's him and his meeting with Trump, for those of you listening at home.
The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over.
Thank you for your hospitality and above all for your leadership. You're a transformational president. Focus on the economy with a relentless focus on the American worker, securing your borders, ending the scourge of fentanyl and other opioids, and securing the world.
Now, if Pierre campaigned like a bitch, that guy governed like a bitch. Well, what did Trump give him, a swirly before that? How do you do a 180 like that? Like, it's one thing to go in and be respectful, but to just flat out introduce yourself by kissing his ass on all the issues you criticized him on and talked all tough behind your little microphone a couple of weeks ago. What happened? Trump just verbally shoved this guy in a locker without saying a word. Because that's the reality. And that's the reality of Canadian politics as a whole. Whoever won, whether it was Carney, whether it was Pierre, whether it was Trudeau, they were all talking tough. The reality was whoever won was going to have to come to Mar-a-Lago and kiss Trump's ring. We've already broken the numbers down. Canada needs the United States way more than the United States needs Canada. Now, they both have beneficial relationships to one another, but the United States is much more important to Canada than vice versa, right? Oh, no, we can't have your shitty whiskey. We make it better here anyway, bitch. Keep your Canadian whiskey. You're punishing us by putting that crap in our stores. We don't want it. I'll take Kentucky bourbon all day over your garbage. Get that out of here. We don't care. It's Crown's probably the only one that's worth the shit that comes from Canada. I can go the rest of my life without drinking Crown ever again. I'll die a happy man. I don't dislike it, but it's not going to stress me out. Either way. So whoever won, they were going to talk tough in the campaign, but the moment they headed down to the White House, the ass kissing was going to commence. There was no way around it, because they know that the second Donald Trump says we're done negotiating, he's going to bring that country to its knees. Canada does not have the cards to win a hand like that with the United States. They can't even bluff. Like, Canada's cards are so... We saw Canada's cards accidentally when the hand got dealt out, and we didn't tell nobody. That's kind of cheating, but if you don't tell, I won't tell. We saw Canada's cards. They got deuce 7 unsuited with nothing on the river, okay? Canada has no cards. Trump knows that, and more importantly, Mark Carney knows that. And that's why he's there kissing the ring with Donald Trump. Okay, we'll do a couple more. A couple more here. So India and Pakistan are going to war. Yeah. Now, I know if you're anything like me, you've probably noticed that over the last couple of days, you've seen a serious decline in the amount of scam phone calls you've gotten. No one has even bothered to call and check up on your car's extended warranty. You know, I kind of liked my Indian scammers. You know, I was getting 15, 20 calls a day. If something was going wrong in my life or I was stressed out, I could always count on Jesus and the Indian phone scammers. The Indian phone scammers would call me, and I'd be able to just let it all out when I cursed them out and told them to do unspeakable things to themselves. Or when every now and then you get like a woman and you can sexually harass her. It was a good time, right? I love fucking with Indian phone scammers, but evidently that's coming to a close now. Can you imagine how bad these hostage camps must smell between India and Pakistan, though? I mean, truly. Truly. The smell of the cooking has got to be like a chemical weapon banned under the Geneva Convention, right? How does this work? Jacob Wilson texted me and told me that kind of like how the U.S. had war bonds during World War II so you could help the war effort, they're going to reopen a bunch of phone scamming places to fund it. I don't know. I mean, look, this is something that's been brewing for a long time now. These two countries, they've been talking a lot of shit for a long time. They've been ready to go to war for a long time. Both of them have nukes. Both of them are a little unstable. Neither of them are really friends to the U.S. So Trump's saying he wants to get involved. And listen, man, you're putting too much on your plate. I know you pride yourself on being the deal maker and whatnot, and that's all cool, but let's get the Ukraine thing shut down. Let's get the Gaza thing squared away. And then if this smelly war is still going on, then maybe you can pop by and try to fix that one too. But you promised to close 2 wars out in your first 100 days, and you haven't gotten either of them. So let's not add another item to the to-do list. Let's accomplish the items on the to-do list right now. That's my 2 cents on the India-Pakistan war. Let's stay on India. So India is, however, kind of interesting that this is all going on at the same time. They did announce that they'll go 0 for 0 on certain items and tariffs with the United States. They'll be removing the tariffs because of the tariffs we placed on them. This comes shortly after they also announced they were going to be adding Apple plants to the country where they'd be developing iPhones that would be sold to the American markets. Now, here's what we need to realize here. When we talk about the grand scheme of things with this trade war with China, you're already seeing all over China mass protests because people have no work. Nothing is being produced in these factories because, like I told you was going to happen, a lot of it's moving to other countries that don't have as harsh of tariffs. There's already cheap labor set up. The factories and the infrastructure are there. So they're just moving the production over there. So you've got people in China soon will be broke, homeless, starving, very upset. But here's the problem. China, if you don't think, there's a couple problems here. If you don't think China hasn't been preparing for this day for decades now, I don't know what to tell you. They've been getting ready for this. Number 2, you don't have to be a history major, and I don't have to be a history teacher to remind you that the Chinese government's track record of giving a shit about its people isn't exactly all that good. They kind of treat their citizens like crap and don't care about it. See the Uyghur Muslim concentration camps, see building prisons to keep people in their homes during COVID, or if you even want to have some fun with it and go back a little bit further, we can talk about Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution where he killed like 80 million people. Long story short, China and the CCP don't really have all that good standing of a record in terms of human rights. So what's that got to do with the tariffs? Well, the idea behind a trade war is to create pressure on the other country through unfortunate economic circumstances for its citizens. The citizens will ideally rise up, put pressure on their government, and the government will come to the negotiating table. But when that government doesn't give a flying fuck about its people and has put them through much worse already, how effective can that be? I don't know. I'm asking you questions. but they've never had a problem in the past with their people suffering. I can't imagine they're going to have a problem with it now. It'd be foolish to assume that. You know, the U.S. telling the Chinese Communist Party, hey, we're going to make your people suffer. Your working class suffer. If you don't do what we want, is kind of like telling your kid, hey, if you don't take the garbage out tonight, I'm not going to let you eat your Brussels sprouts. All right, cool. It's like threatening to shoot somebody with a squirt gun. So that's what we have to keep in mind. We'll celebrate the victories in this trade war when they come. It sounds like we're getting another one with England. But I don't know, man. China has not signaled. I haven't seen any signal from China that they're going to cave on this anytime soon. They're at least going to push through the winter, and they're going to make this a very, very difficult Christmas for the United States with this trade war. It's going to hurt a little bit. And hopefully by next year, we'll start to see what I told you was going to happen, which is not manufacturing jobs being brought back to the United States. The people aren't going to take these jobs, guys, in the United States. They're not going to be able to pay enough. If they do, the prices will go way up. It's not going to work. You're not going to see jobs brought back to the United States. That's all tough talk. You'll see somewhere in the middle. It won't be at a country that hates us, but it also won't be here. It'll be at neutral countries like Thailand, like Vietnam, wherever. That's it. India. So hopefully we'll start seeing the world's manufacturing hubs get moved out of China and into some of these other countries where we can have the best of both worlds. The prices are kept low, and we're not giving the money to a country that hates us. But some of your favorite goods might get a little expensive. Buckle up. It's going to be rough. Just a heads up. Okay, a couple more. Well, the controversy surrounding NPR and PBS is at an all-time high. The Trump administration is seeking to cut it from the federal budget, and a lot of people who like to pretend they watch PBS and listen to NPR are really, really upset. The propaganda campaign. What's hilarious is the propaganda campaign funded by our tax dollars to keep NPR and PBS continuing to suck off the taxpayers' tit is in full force. Does anyone see any problem with this? So they don't make up a huge percentage of the budget, right? They get about $500 million in federal funding, but you all know I'm a big fan of the Dave Ramsey method here. When you're broke, and I think over $30 trillion in debt constitutes as broke, you got to make cuts everywhere you can. If that cut is the $5 latte you get, that cut's the $5 latte you get. But you got to make the cuts when you're broke. So I'm seeing a very misleading statistic gets circulated about PBS and public broadcasting. That claim is that for every $1 of federal funding to PBS, it generates $6. And when people see that, they go, how could you cut that? That means it's bringing in over $3 billion in revenue. No, well, that's not really the case. As always with things the liberals say, it's not the case. It's misleading. First off, the idea that $1 generates $6, or every $1 spent into PBS and NPR generates $6, is from a study run by Booz and Company. I don't know if they're called Booz and Company because they were drinking when they ran this bullshit and manipulated this data, but they're called Booz and Company. So federal funding, here's the logic behind it. They didn't actually run a study. They made a lot of assumptions here. Federal funding via CPB is often used by local stations as seed money. So for every dollar that goes into these stations that air PBS on local television channels and air NPR on local radio stations. This study basically just, they crunched a bunch of numbers together and came to the assumption that every dollar they pour into it generates $6 in local economic activity. So they're not saying that every federal dollar generates $6 in profits or revenue for the government. They're not saying there's a net gain of $6 into the economy. They're just making the claim that they're leveraging more funding, right? So they're saying that for every dollar you get as a local station, that means that you have the opportunity to raise an additional $5, whether it be from foundations, philanthropists, corporate sponsors, viewers and listeners making donations or signing up for memberships, or state and local government. There's nothing that actually proves this. They more or less just said, yeah, we think that sounds about right, and they ran with it. So they're saying they're able to use this dollar of funding that they get to go on the air, attract a bunch of listeners, which who the hell listens to NPR anyways, and raise more money for the station to keep it afloat. Here's my thing, man. I'm a firm believer that if something like a radio station or a television channel can't stay afloat on its own without federal funding, it should just go under. Let it go under, especially in the digital age. There's so much media for free out there. Let it go under. Who cares? Well, let's stop propping up dying businesses, okay? I'm also tired of my tax dollars promoting liberal propaganda, because that's exactly what NPR and PBS do. That's exactly what they do. If they were just reporting the news, that would be one thing. But let's not sit here and act like PBS and NPR aren't horrifically slanted to the left. Here's a couple examples. NPR did a Valentine's Day feature on an article discussing same-sex behavior in animals that suggested that characters like the clownfish in Finding Nemo could be interpreted through a gender-diverse lens. That's your tax dollars hard at work. PBS, Arthur and Sesame Street, that's what everybody associates with it. What they don't talk about is the panel they ran on white privilege, a program exploring the concept of white privilege and its implications on society. Your tax dollars hard at work. NPR's coverage of gender-affirming care. They've released numerous reports supporting gender-affirming medical procedures for minors without covering any potential risks. PBS children's program airing of a show featuring a drag queen called Little Miss Hot Mess, aimed at introducing children to diverse gender expressions and drag. Exploration of Healthism on NPR, an article examining the societal pressure to maintain health and how it can marginalize those who are unable or choose not to conform to certain health standards.
You fat piece of shit.
What that means is, the sound effect kind of summed it up there.
You fat piece of shit.
We're making the fatties feel bad by saying, hey, maybe go to the gym and remove KFC and Haagen-Dazs as two of your major food groups, and you won't die at 43. NPR's investigation into emojis and bias, an analysis of how certain emojis like the thumbs up might carry unintended racial or cultural connotations. You paid for all of this crap. And we all know that if we weren't paying for this crap, nobody else would fund it. It certainly couldn't survive on its own, therefore it should not survive on the taxpayer's dime. If they were literally just going out and saying a tornado struck a town in Missouri, killing 4, that would be one thing. That's not what they're doing. What NPR and PBS are doing is going, a tornado struck a town in Missouri, killing 4. Here's why it's the white man's fault. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying here. That's essentially what they're saying here. The reality is these people don't care. They don't care about wasteful spending. They don't care what these government agencies are doing. behind the scenes with our money. They don't care how absurd and ridiculous it is, bordering on fraud, the way they're wasting our money. They don't care that they're funding state-run propaganda. They only have a problem with state-run propaganda when it's coming from the right. Not from the left, it's okay, right? They don't care about any of that. The reality is, we could show that these agencies are putting beagles in cages, beagle puppies in cages, and letting flies eat their faces off as some type of sick, twisted science experiment to see what their torture levels would go to. And 95% of registered Democrats in this country and people who consider themselves to be liberals would still not support cutting their funding. Do you want to know how I know that? Because that actually happened at the National Institute of Health, and they canonized Dr. Fauci afterwards. They don't give a fuck. As long as it helps you score points against the other side, they're cool with it. This is not about wasteful spending versus not wasteful spending. This is not about morals versus lack of morals. It's not about any of that. This is about propaganda and scoring political points. And that's the other thing. I mean, if you've got a machine that you know is a propaganda machine for you that's being funded by the taxpayer, so your guys like George Soros can blow their money elsewhere, you're not going to want to get rid of that. Why would you want to get rid of a free propaganda machine? The conservatives literally don't have anything equivalent to NPR or PBS. We don't have anything. There's no state-funded media that pushes conservative talking points. So why would the liberals want to let go of it? I don't blame them. Well, they're trying to pick a new pope as of this recording. Maybe they got one by now. But as of this recording, they're trying to pick a new pope. And I'm still holding out hope that it could be Biden. But in the meantime, Donald Trump tweeted out this image of himself. Obviously, it's AI, where he is the Pope. And the liberals lost their ever-loving minds. Lost their ever-loving minds over this image right here. Now, here's what I'll say. Is this poor taste? Yeah. Probably not very cool. Especially, considering the Pope just died and everything. Probably not very cool of him. Not very tactful. But, again, we know what we're getting with Trump, right? We know what we're getting with Trump. This doesn't surprise anyone who voted for him or supported him. What I do find hilarious is all these pearl-clutching liberals screaming at the top of their lungs like Trump, walked into the Pope's funeral, dropped his pants, and took a dump on the coffin by tweeting this image. It's not what he did. That's not what he did here. Disrespectful, poor taste, sure, I'll give you that. But you guys mock Christians all the time, and you expect us to believe that you're genuinely offended by that image. Every chance you guys get, every piece of media, every song, every time religion comes up, you guys do nothing but attack Christians. Remember the drag queen Last Supper at the Olympics last year? Pepperidge Farm remembers. Every chance you get, you guys attack Christianity. But you're offended by an AI image of Trump in a Pope hat. Give me a fucking break. Now, there are some conservative Catholics out there that are legitimately offended by this. And I get it. Like I said, it was in poor taste. It was disrespectful. But these people that are clutching their pearls, pretending like Donald Trump just committed some cardinal sin, blasphemy against Christianity, like they don't do that every waking moment of their lives by merely existing. I'd be willing to bet 2/3 of the people on the left that are upset at that image don't even believe in God. When's the last time you guys have been to church? You mock God with your very existence. You don't get to get mad about an image like that. You're not actually mad. I want to make that clear. You're not actually upset about that. Okay? If you were, you'd be equally as upset every time a drag queen decides to get up dressed as Jesus Christ and strips naked and does all types of gay sex simulations. You don't, though. You don't care. I don't see your outrage there. I don't see your outrage when people are desecrating the Eucharist out in front of the Kansas State Capitol and assaulting people, kicking them while they're lying on the ground. That fat pussy still hasn't responded to me yet. I don't think he's going to box me. You don't get offended by that. In fact, I remember a lot of you guys supporting that guy and defending him assaulting people. So when a guy stomps on the literal body of Christ, and if you're a Catholic like you claim to be, we don't just think that's a wafer. We think that's the actual body of Christ. You're not offended. You don't have a word to say about that. You defend that guy, but you don't defend Trump. You freak out about an AI image. So stomping the literal body of Christ, crickets, if not supporting it. AI image, outrage. Well, that guy had free speech, Caleb. So did Trump. Okay? So the same principles apply there. Why aren't you upset at Michael Stewart at the Kansas State Capitol for stomping on the Eucharist? Why did you defend Michael Stewart but attack Trump? They both have the right to say and do what they did. They both rightfully received criticism for what they did. But you defended one and attacked the other. And it has nothing to do with anything other than the letter by Trump's name. Because you have TDS, your brain is broken. I love when he tweets this crap. I love when he does this. Because all you idiots fixate on this. And this isn't an issue that resonates with real people. When the stock market dipped because of the tariffs, even the word tariff will scare people if you rile them up right. The average everyday American, they hear tariffs and you guys go on talking about price hikes. That scares them. Well, guess what? The price hikes didn't come, so you had to find something to move on to. So instead of continuing to fearmonger about tariffs, now you're talking about Trump tweeting a picture of himself as the Pope. And like I was talking about at the beginning of the show, those average everyday swing voters that sit on the fence and don't really follow politics, that are worried about issues like cell phones and classrooms, don't care all that much. They do care about tariffs. So he's keeping you, it's like a cat with a laser pointer right now. He's keeping you away from the issues that could actually hurt him and focusing on crap like that at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember and nobody's going to care about. Brilliant. Pope Trump. That would be something. Do you think he could do both jobs? I got to get rolling out of here. Before I do, go buy from our sponsors, firecracker.farm, not .com, .org, or .net, firecracker.farm with the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show, save you 10% off your order at the checkout on their premier product, hot salt. Hot salt is a combination of Mediterranean sea salt, scorpion pepper, Carolina Reaper, and ghost pepper. Hot salt goes great on anything, margaritas, meat, fish, you name it. Hot salt is killer on it. I just used some of it the other day. Made on a family farm with love. Buy local or buy American, right? We all want to buy American until it's time to make Caleb a little bit of money on the sponsors. I know. It's fine. It's fine. Buy American. You're willing to pay $2,000 for a fucking iPhone if it's made in the United States, but you're not willing to. I mean, you'll even save money. You'll save like $5 or $6 on hot salt if you use the promo code BASED, B-A-S-E-D, like the title of the show. Save yourself 10% off your order at the checkout. You'll also be less fat. Because if your food is seasoned better, you use less sauces. Let's be honest. The meat's not what's killing you. It's not what's making you fat. It's the sauces. Everyone talks. I'm not a doctor, but everyone talks about cholesterol and red meat's horrible for you. Is red meat actually that bad for you? Or is the fact that you douse it in mayonnaise and ketchup what's killing you every time you have a burger? Well, if you get a kick-ass seasoning like hot salt, you won't need to worry about that. And you might live a little bit longer. You can see your kids not be a degenerate piece of shit like you. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? All right, we'll see you guys on Monday. Cheat on your taxes, not your spouse, and stay based.